Hey guys, this is Mitch, and we're back with more of Garth Ennis's Hitman, because it's Tuesday and I've committed to the bit. I do these a week in advance, so if the first one bombed, I won't know it until next week, so fingers crossed. So before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, I feel like you might want to pitch in a little bit. In the description, there's a link to my Patreon. And if you subscribe there, that'll give you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube stuff before it goes out to YouTube. And also, if you follow me on Instagram, I drop drawings there, and you can DM me for commissions. So, Hitman #1, the big #1 release, and this is 1996, where the crash is starting to gain some momentum, so a #1 means something at this time. So let's do just a bit of catch-up. Hitman is about Tommy Monaghan, who is an assassin, but not like a cool assassin, more like barely paying his bills kind of assassin. And the only reason he does it is because he's not good at anything else. When all of a sudden, Tommy gets assaulted, probably not sexually, by a big old alien, and gets his spinal fluid tapped, which unlocks latent superhuman powers. In his case, it's X-ray vision and telepathy, which has made him virtually impossible to be snuck up on now. So after his initial adventure, where he gained the ire of the Doubles twins and shot his way out of their father's funeral, Hitman's had a couple more guest appearances, and I suppose these probably generated a bit of buzz. And remember, at this time, Garth Ennis is the biggest name in comics for writers, because Preacher has taken off, and DC needs a hit. So while they're not going to go prestige format or anything on this, they're also going to get a little splashy with things like the color and the paper stock. And as we can see, Tommy has already gotten rid of his bandana/neckerchief. So, and again, 96. He's a cooler character than that. And as we can see, we're going to kick off this #1 with a big old guest star. Because again, we want to make sure this succeeds. And it's a fine #1 cover. John McCrea. This will be an interesting week because, John McCrea's art is fine, particularly for this kind of project, because it's not completely serious. Hitman does get pretty goofy pretty often, but it's also like his compositions tend not to be particularly noteworthy. You know, it's just kind of whatever needs to be done to, get the thing down on the page. And that's kind of the case here. You can see this is a pretty cartoony version of Batman already, even if he is mostly obscured by shadow. And we're even going to sub in like a Starfield background. But that's what you get for not drawing a real one. All right, so A Rage in Arkham, Part 1 of 3. And as you can see here, the look has been upgraded significantly since his first appearance in the Demon Annual #2. And Kingdom Come's coming out. May 96. Be there. When did this come out? April. There you go. Just about ready. And Tommy starts out by telling us exactly what he does, which is he kills people for money. And pretty good starting page. I mean, that's an attention getter. And you know it's not going to shy away from some blood right off the bat, which is kind of important for a Hitman comic. But yeah, that colorist kind of went to work on that first page, didn't he? All right. So, as we start out, Tommy is fending off members of the Doubles gang. So this is all just self-defense. And he gives us the backstory I already gave you. So I probably could have just read this. Oh well. And you can kind of see how this is going to go. It's not low effort or anything. Like, everything looks fairly nice. Although, again, more on the cartoony side. He gets some fun poses. Like, I like this shot here of Tommy running. That's some pretty good pose work and good expression on his face, too. That is one thing that John McCrea actually excels at, is his expressions. And which helps to make Tommy likable, which is important, because that's kind of the whole point of this series, is that he's a likable assassin. He's a decent guy, except for, all the murdering. And we get a quick run through of his powers. So, using X-ray vision, sees he's about to get ambushed here. But, of course, gets ready, gets the gun right in his mouth. And we get a little bit of the telepathy with the goon here being like, oh God, oh Lord, help me, please. beg him to let me go. And just, please let me go. And then waste him. So this is already setting the tone, which is the most important thing for this comic. So waste these goons over here with the grenade, waste this one guy here, and all of a sudden gets attacked by Shadow Force. That's a little close to home. And we get the sum up here. You see these guys every week on TV. Someone falls into a reactor or finds out his dad was half demon or whatever. You know the routine. Except now it looks like this mobster I got mad at me saved up and hired a team of them. So that sets up a couple of important things. Well, for one thing, it kind of is a bit of a warning bell for the boys. Because, I mean, that's kind of where that ends up going, at least to a small degree. But more importantly, this is a comedy action book set in the DC universe. So, but with the regular people, essentially. Or as regular as an assassin can be. So as a guy just trying to get by in the DC universe, you just get used to seeing superheroes and supervillains just destroying shit all around you. You get used to things like the sun turning off for a week. You get used to like demons from hell invading every once in a while. Whatever, you know? Just shit happens. So Tommy getting superpowers isn't really that big a deal in this world. It's just, fuck, now I gotta deal with this too. And of course, the supervillains need to sound off here. Twilight, Darkstorm, Mink, who's their Wolverine stand-in, Cockatoo, Panzer, and Ironbolt. Shadow Force, go! I feel like this was, you know what, I didn't intend it to be, but this is a little bit the template for something like Blood Force. I actually haven't read this in a few years now, so checking it out, it is kind of funny. It's like, this is a little bit like Blood Force #1, really, looking at it. And then, of course, they all just run at him with no kind of plan, just, we're super, so it'll work out. And they all get gunned down by Tommy. Because, this is his job. He kills people for a living. So a bunch of goofs in, matching color-coded costumes aren't going to put up much of a fight. So this was the idea for the series here, I think, is that Tommy would, as a superpowered assassin, he would kill superpowered targets. So, get mugged by a cyborg, call me. Darkseid, kidnap mom, call me. Swamp Thingy, scare your kids, call me. Possessed by Etrigan and don't know any exorcists, call me. So again, that's the starting idea. It feels like it kind of starts to lose that after a while, at least. As Garth Ennis becomes a bit more comfortable with the characters and, gets a better idea of where he wants to direct the series. And of course, Tommy gets his cool one-liner moments, such as, if anybody's not dead, now would be a good time to say. And again, nice, just relaxed shot. Yeah, his pose work is underrated. It's not spectacular, but every once in a while, it's like, that's kind of naturalistic. I like that. For an exaggerated, cartoony style. So, Tommy's managed to rid himself of the Doubles goons as well as the super goofs. So, it's time to settle down for the evening, so we're going to head back to Noonan's Sleazy Bar, if we recall from the last issue, which is looking a bit more realistic than the last time we saw it. A large part of that is due to the coloring, but also it's no longer, we're going to see basically reflected in the bar here what we're going to see in the characters that we met in the first time around as well. So this is really kind of the heart of the book, where we've got a table full of killers just shooting the shit after a long day of plugging people. So we got here Ringo, we got Pat, we got Sean, and Hacken. And they're all killers of some kind or another, theoretically. Ringo's more of a high-end assassin, basically a John Woo type, Chow Yun-Fat. Sean is a retired hitman from the 50s and 60s, I suppose. And Pat is Sean's nephew. He's not really a killer himself, but, he's been part of the life his entire life. And Hacken's just kind of a clueless asshole with a gun. Although at the beginning here, we don't really know that. And you see what I mean here about the characters. Like this here's Pat. We did see him in the first appearance. Yeah, right there. So he's changed a fair bit from this to this. So he's become more character than caricature. Now that this is a real book and not just a one-off. And Pat's the kind of guy who lets things go fairly easy, until his buddy Tommy shows up, at which point he can start hiding behind him and hacking out and calling him stupid. And it just kind of turns into a bull session, as they say. And that's how we're going to build up the audience's liking for Tommy and these characters. By just having them like shoot the shit, joke around, play some poker, and kind of say dumb stuff. Like guy shit. And it comes down to the end of the hand. And Ringo is barely beat out by Tommy. And this is basically giving you a hint of their particular relationship, which is that whole thing of who's better. And you get the impression they're both kind of equal. Like, Ringo is a far better assassin, really. They don't really say much about him here. He turns out to be more of a mysterious character for quite a while. But you get the impression that he actually sees it as a bit of a craft. Whereas, Tommy, like, if all the guns in the world were to disappear, Tommy would be out of a job. He has no other way to do what he does. But he can still get the job done. And you figure if Tommy's a pretty good hitman, he should probably be rolling in dough, right? Well, he kind of explains where most of that goes. So he's able to stay ahead of Ringo by about a hand for the rest of the night, which he says is good because he blew $1,000 betting on a ball game previously. And that's kind of how it goes for Tommy. You get the impression if he's not spending it on bullets or booze, yeah, he's just spending it on gambling. This is a somewhat, I don't know. I don't know if it's realistic, but it's a take where, the people who get into the Hitman game aren't really those who are necessarily good at long-term planning. And right away, Ringo asks about how come Tommy never takes those shades off. And Pat knows because, he ran the black eyes by him earlier. But he's not exactly going to say. He does spill pretty easily a lot of the time, but he's going to stick by Tommy at least. And Ringo queries whether that maybe has something to do with how Tommy's the only one who takes on superhero contracts. And Pat's like, nah, you saw an opening in the market. He figured, yeah, somebody's got to fill that hole. Ringo replies by saying, yeah, the problem with that kind of work is it's bound to bring its own heat. And we're going to see some of that heat right here. So remember, this is a character that spawned in Etrigan the Demon. So now we're going to cut to hell, which seems like it doesn't really fit too well. But, like we've already established a connection there. And this is, the kind of book where goofy shit happens, including why not have the demonic lords of murder? Murder by firearms, specifically. So these are the Arcanon, who are a pair of floating bullet-ridden corpses. That's their aspect. And they get the idea that Tommy should be their agent in the real world. So walking among the mortals and killing in their name. Which is a little difficult because although he is a hitman, he was brought up Catholic. And he still thinks of himself as a decent guy. So he's not just going to become, the saint of killers kind of thing, which is the idea. So they're going to draw him to a place of evil and put him in a position where he has no choice, essentially. So they send one of their other agents, the Mauser, and basically give him carte blanche to act how he sees fit to get Tommy on their side with the knowledge that, if you fuck up, you'll pay for it. Don't worry. All right, so back to Tommy here, who's packing up a shit ton of bullets when he bumps into a cute girl on the street. And we're going to see Tommy be charming, which is something we'll see fairly often over the course of the series. He's a bit of a smooth talker. Yeah, kind of. Half of it is like goofy charm. So he takes a liking to her right away. She kind of picks up a package she dropped and goes, oh, it's heavy. What's in that? Oh, yeah, it's bullets. And it's like, bullets? Yeah, I'm an assassin. So, but, again, that goofy kind of charm. And I like, again, that gestural kind of thing. He's able to capture... You get the motion he's going for here exactly, the expression, even though it's from a bit of a tough angle. And naturally, she blows that off as a joke. It's like, oh, an assassin, I see. It's like, hey, that isn't everything. I got superpowers, too. Crazy. So you're probably checking me out with your x-ray vision. No, I wouldn't do that. Not at all. So he invites her out so that he can regale her with his exploits, fighting crime and shit. And while he's engaging in conversation, he decides to find out what kind of food she likes. Like, he's not going to go prying into her deepest and darkest corners of her mind kind of thing, because, again, thinks he's a good guy. But he's not above using his abilities to get a bit of an edge to find out that, unfortunately, Wendy likes Indian food. So, invites her out to this great Indian place he knows. And, surprise, surprise, Wendy goes for that. So, yeah, Pat and Tommy go back to Tommy's apartment here. And again, we get that great kind of gestural work where, like, sometimes, like, this shot here of Pat is, like, okay, but it's a little stiff and awkward. Part of that's probably the angle. And then stuff like this just looks excellent. This one here, too, actually, where he just kind of reaches for the phone. Like, it almost looks modeled. I don't know if it is or not. But it's interesting. Sometimes he can get it dead on, and sometimes it's not so much. Again, just a good shot here. It might be modeled. I'm not for sure. Either way, he's very good at capturing just a kind of a quick pose or whatever that looks very natural. But Tommy accepts a call from his I guess it'd be like an agent, essentially. The person who arranges his hits for him, or a person who arranges hits for him. And he offers him a job, which is like, well, that's worth checking out, because it turns out that whoever this person is, he doesn't say over the phone, turns out they're worth $1 million. And I think I said in the last episode, where this is going to keep happening, where Tommy's on the verge of a payday, and either he gets screwed out of it, or his moral streak kind of stops him from taking it at the last second, because of some kind of twist. And immediately, once he starts thinking about that $1 million, he's thinking about his plans to move to New York City. And now we get to see who his target is. So, yeah, he's going to get to break into Arkham and try and kill the Joker. Interesting version, one of the more evil versions, I guess, even though it is, again, in a more cartoony style. And his agent here tells him, hey, you know what? I mean, it's a weird job, but, like, it's probably not going to be that tough. With how often those assholes break out of there, it's probably pretty easy to break in. And off in some other corner of Gotham, because remember, we're in Gotham, the same thug. Is this the same guy? Might be. What I'm pretty sure is the same thug. It's hard to tell. Yeah, no, I think it is. He was getting the shit beat out of him by someone, probably supery, in Gotham. No idea who that could be. We didn't see the cover, right? So anyway, Batman has found out that there's a hit out on the Joker's life. And he knows Monaghan's been hired against him. And Batman has seen Monaghan before in the one issue of his that was the Contagion issue. So he's already decided that Tommy needs to be brought to justice. So he's going to beat the living shit out of somebody until they tell him where Tommy is. It's always interesting seeing Garth Ennis' version of Batman, where he's extremely competent and has absolutely no sense of humor. That's like the biggest sum up for Batman. So, after his date with Wendy, kisses her goodnight, shuffles through her mind just enough to know, don't give her the tongue, and don't try to push your luck trying to get into her apartment. And because of that, he's earned himself a second date, which is a little creepy, but we've built up enough of Tommy to like him enough to kind of let this slide, I think, at this point. And I mean, one of the things about Hitman, which again, I think has already been kind of implied, but does get set up more and more as the series progresses, is that Tommy always gets back whatever kind of karma he puts out into the world. So if he's a little kind of scuzzy right now, it's not going to turn out well. So walking away, he just gets this message in his head going, Batarang. So able to duck just in time. Turns out Batman's just standing in the hallway there, and Tommy goes, who are you? Just kidding. And starts running away. Ends up on the roof, nowhere to go. So, now you just get to sit up there on a roof with fucking Batman when he's deciding that you need to be brought in. So Batman's done a bit of research about Tommy, figures out he's done countless murders, and knows about this impending hit on the Joker. And Tommy has no idea what to do. Again, he can't fight worth a damn. Except he realizes, thanks to the X-ray vision, that the bat symbol is armored. So he can just shoot him under there. Batman falls off the roof. Tommy goes running down the stairs. Batman's recovered instantly and punches him right in the stomach, which is the wrong time to do that because Tommy, who doesn't like Indian food, just came back from Indian dinner, and Tommy ends up just throwing up all over his boots. And you get one of the better comedy shots that's kind of out there, just that moment of awkwardness where they stare at each other like, you just did that, didn't you? And then knocks him into next week. Tommy's internal monologue here is great. Just, okay, he's right to be steamed. I doubt the Penguin ever did that to him. But, enough's enough. That's your kneecaps. And that's when it kind of ends. Because all of a sudden, Tommy's surrounded by cops, and he doesn't shoot cops. So, that wraps up Hitman #1. Awful lot happened in that. The art, you can, it's enough to get it from A to B. And again, it has the right tone, which is the important thing for Hitman. But we established an awful lot about Tommy. We established his abilities. We established the world he lives in. We set up this immediate sort of arc of a story for him with the assassination of the Joker. We established an early rivalry with Batman, which is always fun. And if you didn't want to pick up #2 after this, I gotta wonder what the hell you were expecting. And the prices are already kind of skyrocketing out of control. This is 96 and it's $3.25 Canadian. Like 5 years previous to this, comics were $1.25. And then a year after that, it was more like $2. And now, 4 years after that, there's another $1.25. So it's just gotten out of control. And this is Diamond, who are, in 96, Marvel is starting to go through the beginnings of their bankruptcy after trying to acquire Heroes World. That whole saga is some kind of riveting, really, reading. It must have been an interesting time to work through. But Marvel acquired Heroes World so that they can publish themselves, which meant that Capital City Comics, I think, all of a sudden didn't have enough juice to compete with Diamond. And then Diamond bought them up, and then they had a monopoly. And now they can raise all the distribution costs as much as they want, which just means higher costs of comics. Which is one of the problems we have now today, where just an average comic is going to be $5 US. Yeesh. But, that's still like 25 years or so worth of inflation. At least the rate's gotten better, I suppose, rate of increase. Anyway, that's enough rambling for today. So tomorrow we'll check out Chapter 2 of A Rage in Gotham. But we're done with Hitman #1 at least. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notifications so you know when the next one's coming out. Comment down below. Do whatever else I didn't say that helps the algorithm. There's probably like 5 different things. I don't know. Go over to my Patreon and subscribe there. That gives you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube stuff before it goes to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusives. And if you go and follow me on Instagram, I will be dropping drawings there at least once a week. And you can DM me for commissions. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. So before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, feel like you might want to pitch in a little bit, what you can do is in the description, there's a link to my description. What? Okay, try that again. In the description, there's a link to my Patreon. And if you subscribe there, that'll give you access to my... Fuck's sake.